That's the news. Douglas Edwards reporting coast to coast, saying good night and happy weekend, everybody, for
American Can Company, known as Canco. Look for this famous oval.
Thanks for staying up later. Don Hewitt, the executive producer of 60 Minutes. But before 60 Minutes debuted, in the late 60s, there was a long career and a long resume before that, including being in on the very beginning of the first network nightly newscast, right?
Yeah. Douglas Edwards with the news.
1948?
48. Yeah, and all I remember about that is that when I first went to CBS, we were doing the news 3 nights a week. And somebody said, we ought to do this every night. And we said, you can't do this every night. That's ridiculous.
Besides, there's only news 3 nights a week.
That's only 3 nights a week. And besides, you know, we don't have enough facilities or people to do this thing 5 nights.
Good evening, everybody. Coast to coast, Douglas Edwards reporting a slow-motion view of a fast-action crack-up and death in the Indianapolis 500. A Memorial Day service in Arlington for 2 nameless American dead, and a campaign nears a climax in Pivotal, California. Those and other stories in just a moment. Tonight, brought to you by
American Can Company, known as Canco, leading developer and producer of metal, plastic, and paper containers for over 2,000 different products.
And then eventually we went to 5 nights a week, and then it went to a half hour, and eventually Doug got replaced by a fellow named Walter somebody or other, Cronkite, I think.
Av Weston, who went on to great success at ABC, 2020, and other achievements, said about you, he invented the wheel of television news.
I read that. I wish it were true. I don't know. First of all, in those early days at CBS, all the talent was in the dramatic part. Do you know the associate directors around there, all the young kids were guys like Sidney Lumet, Johnny Frankenheimer, Bobby Mulligan. One of the guys around there doing dramatic things in those days was a guy named Frank Schaffner, who left and went to Hollywood and did Patton and Nicholas and Alexandra and Papillon. So there wasn't much talent in the news department. So you could, you know, even if you were a little bit smart, you looked a lot smarter than you were. So people thought you invented the wheel because there was no competition.
But early on, I would guess that in the early days of the technology, the first thought was, okay, we've got a television newscast. Essentially, it's just a radio newscast, and you can see the guy reading it, and then it occurred to you, well, why not use some pictures? Why not use some crude early graphics and spice this thing up a little bit?
Right, yeah. That's, in those days, CBS didn't even have its own cameraman. We bought a service from an outfit called Telenews. Boy, it was really horse and buggy. It was all kind of, you were like Smiling Jack. You know, you were flying by the seat of your pants, and you were trying to hold the plane together with chewing gum. And I always figured that the Doug Edwards newscast was one of those things that you look like you should go out and wind up the propeller every night to get the thing off the ground.
As we circle, the Andrea Doria seems to be slowly easing over. Our Navy skipper says she's going down in a very few minutes. Now the swimming pools are in the water. The ship is taking water fast. It's a 50% list now with the funnels down. Green foam looking for all the world like lifeblood of a great ship. A terrible sight to see.
And eventually, all the things that you kind of did by the seat of your pants, they now do electronically. For instance, electronically you can superimpose names, anything you want to do. Well, they do too much of that and say, television is so full of supers, you know, Joe Blow, a terror expert. I used to say to myself, if there were any terror experts, there wouldn't be any terror. Supers. In the old days, before they could do them electronically, we're at the 1952 Democratic Convention. And the whole trick is, how can you identify people in the audience without dipping the audio so Cronkite can say he was there? You want to just put their name on it. But it takes so long to set it up and photostat type, and you can't do it electronically. Nobody had thought of it then. And I'm figuring out, there's got to be a way to solve this problem. I'm having breakfast in a diner. And the waitress says to me, what do you have? At that moment, my eyes go up, and I see this board, and it says, hamburgers, 35 cents, soup, 75 cents, pot roast. And I said, how much you want for that board? She said, well, what do you mean? I said, I can use that board. I bought the board in the diner because they had little white letters that you put in black to spell out. And I figured, if you can spell out pot roast, you can also spell out Tom Dewey, you know, Everett Dirksen. That was the first supers. I brought the board back from the diner. Well, that's why people say I invented the wheel. I didn't. I invented the sandwich board.
You had a knack for that kind of stuff. For example, when the Russians launched Sputnik, how did you illustrate that for the viewers? This is like 1957 or something.
Yeah, I needed something to show the Sputnik going around the Earth. And I went down. There was an outfit called De Viga. They were an old sporting goods store that out of business for years. But they happened to be downstairs from where the studio was. And I went down there and I got a cotton golf ball. You know, the kind you practice with in the living room?
Sure.
And I stuck it on the end of a spike, and I put it on a thing that were, and the cotton golf ball became the Sputnik going around the Earth to explain to people why it was going over certain parts of the Earth while the Earth was turning. And I don't know, it was kind of
just took like a regular globe from a kid's classroom?
I took a globe from a kid's classroom, and by doing some kind of television magic, I don't know what it was, but the first Sputnik that America saw was a cotton golf ball.
There was another idea you had that didn't work out so well. In fact, people laughed at you.
Braille. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not dumb. That's a great idea.
There were no teleprompters.
No teleprompters, okay?
They hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, and nobody thought about writing out cue cards. That was a big deal. I mean, who's got the time to write
So
out
if you looked at those old things, a guy'd be reading the news like this. In
Right.
Istanbul today,
Exactly.
and the head is going up and down.
So I said to Doug Edwards once, you know, if you learn Braille, and we type your script in Braille, and we clip the shot here, so we can't see your hand, you can sit here and run your hand over the script and deliver the whole thing. And everyone, this guy's crazy. That's not a bad idea. But now now you can look right into the camera and read your teleprompters.
See, but now an appreciation for chutzpah had to be something you brought to any occasion because, especially in the early days.
I did things in the early days, Bob, that if a guy worked for me today did those, I'd fire him.
Like what?
Oh, once a plane went down the East River, and it was a tugboat strike, so there was only one boat out on the river. And we all went down to where the boat had just come in doing rescue work on the river. And it's one of these, and the captain is in his glory. He's in a wheelhouse, and there is, you know, Gabe Pressman and all the local guys, and he's telling this story. And the oil is burning, and we're picking the bodies up out of the thing, and he's in his glory. He's really telling a story. And all these guys, you know, oh, yes, Captain, what about? And I'm looking around, I think. And I stop and I say, hey, who owns this boat? All these guys say, cut. Hewitt, that's the stupid. Who cares who owns the boat? The man's telling the story of the rescue. The guy said, New Haven Tugboat Company. They say, okay, Captain, will you continue? And Hewitt, will you shut up with your dumb questions? So they all continue again. I sneak out, I go down on the dock, and I go to the phone, and I call this desk at CBS News. I say, call New Haven Tugboat Company. Charter their boat. The only boat they got out here in the river. Okay. Now I come back in, and as I come back in, all the guys going like this to me. Don't ask any more dumb questions. He's telling us a great story. All of a sudden, the phone rings in the wheelhouse, and the guy says, hold it. He said, okay, which one of you guys is Hewitt, CBS? I said, it's me, sir. He said, okay, the boat's under charter to you now. What do you want to do? I said, the first thing I want to do is throw all these guys off. This is my boat. They couldn't believe it. Threw all the guys off. Now we sail out to where the wreckage is. It's getting to dawn. Out comes, the only thing NBC could find was a rowboat with an outboard motor on the back. And they come out, and they got the dish pointed at the Empire State Building to get a signal out of there for the Today Show. I say to the skipper, listen, if you maneuver the boat and you get between them and the Empire State Building, they can't get a signal past you, right? They're too low in the water. I said, terrific, we'll do it. The captain is now into the whole bit, network rivalry. He maneuvers the boat, and in maneuvering the boat, he rammed the NBC.
Ooh.
We didn't sink him, but we almost did, by accident. Now I get back to CBS, and the first thing I get called in by the guy who was then president of CBS News, Mickelson, and he says to me, what in the hell did you do? I said, what do you mean? He said, Bill Paley got a call from David Sarnoff that you tried to sink his boat in the East River. And the only thing I could think to say was, crybabies.
Great rejoinders in history, ladies and gentlemen. Back after this.
Hello, San Francisco. This is Ed Murrow in New York. Just stand by. We'll be with you in all but 90 seconds from now.
CBS Television, in cooperation with its affiliated television stations, presents the distinguished reporter and news analyst, Edward R. Murrow, in See It Now, a document for television based on the week's news.
How great a man was Edward R. Murrow?
He was a giant. But Ed Murrow, this is a typical television story. Ed Murrow had the very good fortune to be a very, very talented man who happened to look like Walter Pidgeon, the actor, playing Ed Murrow.
How about the time when you were in the control room and Edward R. Murrow showed America either coast simultaneously?
Well, I'm always amused by that because people are always talking about, in the days of Murrow, there was substance and they didn't go for gimmicks, and there's too many gimmicks today on television and nobody is interested in substance. But every time they drag out Murrow, they do the gimmick of the two oceans. It's kind of funny.
We are, as newcomers to this medium, rather impressed by the whole thing. Impressed, for example, that I can turn to Don Hewitt here and say, Don, will you push a button and bring in the Atlantic coast?
It was big gee whiz in those days. It ain't much today when you had guys on the moon. Doesn't mean much. But it meant a lot then.
Now, San Francisco, could you use what you call, I think, a zoom-R lens and close in on the bridge a little?
Roger.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, San Francisco. Just stand by for a moment, will you? Hello, New York.
Yes.
May we have the Brooklyn Bridge, please?
Coming right up, Mr. Murrow. There she is.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Let me tell you a great Murrow story. Murrow is in Israel riding to an airstrip with Moshe Dayan, General Dayan. And Dayan talks about the McCarthy thing, and he says, Murrow, that is one of the great services to the free world, what you did with Joe McCarthy. And Murrow said, gee, General, he said, there were a lot of guys doing that. I wasn't the only one. And then they drove on. Dayan didn't say anything, and he turned to Murrow again. He said, well, he said, what you did on your broadcast from London during the war, you know, you may have saved England. And he said, oh, it wasn't me. It was Cecil Brown. It was a million other guys. And they drove on, and Dayan shut up. And then they got about another 10 miles, and he said, well, I saw your broadcast, Christmas in Korea. That's the best documentary I ever saw. And Murrow said, listen, a lot of guys had a hand, and they were the cameramen and Charlie Mack and the sound men. It wasn't really me. And then Dayan never said another word. And they got to the airstrip, and Murrow got out of the Jeep. They shook hands, said goodbye. He started up. They got up to the door of the plane, and Dayan, standing at the bottom, looked up and he said, Murrow! And he turned around and said, yes, sir? He said, don't be so modest. You're not that good. Isn't that a great line?
I'm not going to ask you to be modest, because in some cases it wouldn't be appropriate, considering how long the resume is. You directed the first Kennedy-Nixon debate.
Yeah. That was some night.
What does the cut? The cut means that's it. Get out, Grace. 5 seconds. Right. No, what I mean is, you want to quit quickly, or how?
Yes.
How
well,
much?
we figure when you see 30 seconds,
Then try to bring it. All right.
And then the cut is that's it. And then Howard will give you a few seconds over the cut, and then bang,
Yeah, I
bang.
understand. Sure, sure. Well, we'll try it.
Come on. Stay right there, Mr.
The impression you remember that night is, that night, America elected a president. They didn't have to wait for Election Day. Jack Kennedy was elected that night. There's something wrong with that, Bob. Guys should not be elected on how well they perform on television. That's bad.
Except one distinction. Then, they were performing, yes, but they were talking essentially about their positions and about issues. They were less well coached. And
no, if you listened on radio, you assumed that Nixon won. If you watched on television, you knew that Kennedy won. Kennedy was this good-looking Ivy League Catholic kid with the tan. He'd been, you know, he looked like Lochinvar. And Nixon looked he looked like a schlemiel.
Senator, the vice president in his campaign has said that you are naive and at times immature. He has raised the question of leadership. On this issue, why do you think people should vote for you rather than the vice president?
Well, the vice president and I came to the Congress together. 1946, we both served in the Labor Committee. I've been there now for 14 years, the same period of time that he has. So that our experience in government is comparable.
Let us understand throughout this campaign that his motives and mine are sincere. I know what it means to be poor. I know what it means to see people who are unemployed. I know Senator Kennedy feels as deeply about these problems as I do. But our disagreement is not about the goals for America, but only about the means to reach those goals.
The Republican leadership has opposed federal aid for education, medical care for the aged, development of the Tennessee Valley, development of our natural resources. I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view and which party do we want to lead the United States?
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement?
I have no comment.
Nixon said no to the makeup that night, right? Didn't wear any makeup at all.
He was made up with some kind of a shave stick, and he looked terrible. Well, Kennedy didn't want makeup. Kennedy was campaigning in an open convertible. You know, he looked terrific. And when I asked Kennedy whether he wanted makeup, and he said no, Nixon heard that. So when I said, Nixon, you want makeup? And he said, no, he didn't want news stories the next day that he was made up and Kennedy wasn't. I had the best makeup person in television there with me. Now, several years later, after Kennedy was assassinated, we did some specials, and we had Nixon on one of the shows, and he was being made up by Frances Arvold, the makeup gal, whose services he didn't use that night. And I said to him, you know, Mr. Nixon, if you'd let Franny make you up 3 years ago, whenever it was, 2 years ago, I forget how long Kennedy was the president, you would have been president. And he said, yeah, I'd have been dead now, too. He said it that fast. He realized that Kennedy had just been assassinated and must have gone through his head, if I'd been president, I'd be in that coffin now. What a revealing moment. But he didn't miss a beat. If you'd let her make up, you'd have been president. He said, yeah, I'd have been dead now, too. Wow.
Rolling on with Don Hewitt. LBJ was legendary for trying to establish just who was boss in any relationship. And he'd use any edge, physical, verbal, any edge that he could come up with. What did he try to do with you?
We were down at the ranch. Mike Wallace, a guy named Bud Benjamin, and I, and he put us up in his bunkhouse, and he woke us up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he said, come on, guys, get in the... I mean, he had a big white convertible, and we got in the... They were with a big hat in the back of the head and the big ears, and Benjamin's up front, Mike and I are in the back, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's eating a Snickers bar, right? Okay? This is what he's having for breakfast. The President of the United States is eating... I guess he was not president anymore. He might have been out by then. And he's eating a Snickers bar, and all of a sudden he hits the brake, and he says to me, you, throw the wrapper in the garbage can. I said, sir? He said, throw this wrapper in the garbage can. He was establishing, even though I was the producer down there, that he was the boss. It was his ranch. So I got out, and I threw the wrapper in the can. He drove off and left me. I'm running down the road, chasing his white convertible, and he's figuring, you know...
He's at the wheel.
He's at the wheel driving, and he left me. Now, we go to the Lyndon Johnson State Park. And he said, let me hear, you want to hear something? And he gets out, and he pushes a button on a tree. There's a tree there with a button, and there's this old shack is falling down. And he pushes his button, and there's a loudspeaker in a tree. And it tells you a story about the shack. And the loudspeaker starts, and here are the three of us. Lyndon Johnson, Bud Benjamin, Mike, and I are in the back seat. And the tree says, in this shack lived a little old black lady. She was a midwife. And one night, she got on her mule and she rode 20 miles through the thunder and lightning down the road to deliver a little baby. I mean, here's the three guys in a car, and we're listening to a tree. Did you ever sit in the car and listen to a tree? So the tree is telling us a story, right? And it said, and she got to this, and that little baby's name was, and there's a pause. And as he pauses, he turns around and he looks in the back seat, and he's looking right at me and Mike. And he's got those big ears, and a hat's on the back of the head. He's got this grin from ear to ear, and the tree says, and that little baby's name was Lyndon Baines Johnson. Now, he waits for applause, I guess, right? I don't know whether to fall out of the car. I don't know how I kept it in. Only Mike. Mike hits him on the shoulder and he says, Mr. President, that's the loveliest story I ever heard.
Shortly after Walter Cronkite took over the CBS Evening News, Fred Friendly, the president of the division, fired Don Hewitt as the executive producer of the broadcast, said he was too volatile for day-to-day nightly journalism at CBS, and somehow the man recovered from the shock, went on to be the executive producer of 60 Minutes, and now is in the Television Hall of Fame.
For his pioneering efforts to take the viewing audience into the heart of the news story, and for his never-ending pursuit by word and deed of excellence in broadcast journalism, the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences welcomes into its Hall of Fame Mr. Don Hewitt.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay. Don Hewitt. We'll see you later.
Bob's guest tomorrow will be Bonnie Raitt.